Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is Hellblazer, Fear and Loathing. Now, this collects issues 62 through 67 of the horror/dark fantasy comic book series Hellblazer from DC and Vertigo Comics. Now, the issues collected in here were written by Garth Ennis and illustrated by Steve Dillon, and this is part of Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer, which started with the acclaimed Dangerous Habits storyline. Now, prior to Garth Ennis, Jamie Delano was the head writer of this series. Now, these comics feature the character of John Constantine, who is sort of a paranormal investigator/demon hunter/modern-day wizard. Now, this character was originally created by Alan Moore, Stephen Passett, and John Tolobin, and first appeared as a reoccurring character in Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing. Now, issues 1 through 61 of this series were all later collected in Hellblazer Volume 1 through 6, which I have reviewed, and I'll leave links in the description below to where you can check out those reviews. And the issues collected in this book would later be published in Hellblazer Volume 7, Tainted Love. Now, this particular story arc was published in 1993. Now, the plot of this story arc is we follow John Constantine, who has recently turned 40, and he's trying to live a normal life with his girlfriend Kit and leave the supernatural behind him. But Constantine has recently made an arch-enemy in a powerful fallen angel called the First of the Fallen, who is implied to be the first angel that God created long before he created the universe, who was cast out long before even Lucifer, and he was the first ruler of hell, i.e. the first Satan. And he has screwed the First of the Fallen over multiple times, and he knows that the devil is plotting some kind of revenge against him. He just doesn't know what yet, but he has to prepare for this. But the comic also focuses on the Archangel Gabriel, who for several years now has been living among the humans, but specifically among the elite in our society, because Gabriel, he already looks down on humans and has a disdain for humanity, but it seems like the only humans he does respect are the powerful in our society, the rich and powerful, which to me is the complete antithesis of Christianity, but a big point of Hellblazer is turning these religious concepts sort of on their ear. And Gabriel has been attending this sort of rich man's club. Now, it's unclear if the other patrons of the club are aware of who or what Gabriel is, but we know at least one person is aware of who he is, and that's this corrupt, racist politician named Charles Patterson, who is basically a neo-Nazi, and he's trying to come to power in the British government, and he thinks having an actual archangel on his side might help him come to power, because that would be basically the second best to having God on his side. But during their last encounter, Constantine made Gabriel aware of who this guy is, where Constantine was like, hey, you're so high and mighty, but look at who you're associating with. You really think God's gonna like that? And this has basically caused Gabriel to have a complete crisis of faith. Now, Patterson, believing that Constantine turned Gabriel against him, now plots revenge against Constantine as well as Constantine's loved ones. And now Gabriel, who is questioning his faith, ends up developing a relationship with a human woman, but little does he know that a succubus named Ellie also plots revenge against him for something that happened in the past. But yeah, Fear and Loathing is a very good story arc. Honestly, it might be one of the best of the series, and this tackles religion and politics in ways that would honestly still be kind of shocking even today. I will say, if you are a Christian or religious at all, I'm not gonna lie, you might be offended by some of the things that are in this comic. Now look, I do have some of my own personal religious beliefs, but I'm capable of separating what I personally personally believe from the fiction that I read. But I'm just giving you fair warning, this comic does have a very cynical view of Christianity. When we get Gabriel's point of view in the story, God is almost portrayed as kind of an abusive father, and the angels are expected to obey his every command no matter what, and this is partly why Lucifer and the first of the fallen turned against God, and why Gabriel is starting to question his faith. There's also a scene in this comic that could be considered very blasphemous. There's a part in this where it's heavily implied that Jesus was born by Gabriel raping the Virgin Mary. And when I read that, I was like, oh, this probably pissed off a lot of Christian readers. But look, I'm personally not really offended by it, but I could see some people being offended by it. But to me, the most compelling aspect of this story arc is really the political aspects of this story. Because the main antagonist of this story arc is really this neo-Nazi politician who is using people's fear and ignorance as a way to gain power. And that's frighteningly relevant and prescient to politics today. And there is a part of this where Constantine and a black friend of his are kidnapped by this guy's thugs, and yeah, if you're at all sensitive to racism, there is some really uncomfortable stuff in this, because the comic really does tackle the horrors of racism head on. And that's something that Hellblazer does so well, is juxtaposing supernatural horror with real-life horror. And you have Constantine, who has gone up against demons, fallen angels, vampires, zombies, and so many other supernatural creatures, but the one thing that he's powerless against is human evil. There are no spells, there is no magic that can get rid of the hatred in man's hearts. The comic also goes into the relationship between Constantine and his girlfriend Kit, and let's just say it does not end well for their relationship. It's not really Constantine's fault entirely, but kind of is at the same time, and it is really heartbreaking what ends up happening between them. And in the last issue collected in here, we see Constantine probably at one of his lowest points. But Kit is shown to be a freaking badass. Like, there's a scene in this where Patterson sends two of his thugs after her, and she sticks it to these guys in more ways than one. But yeah, like I said, this is a very good story arc. If you're a fan of this series or the John Constantine character, definitely check this comic out. Now, most of the issues collected in here all tell one story, but the first two issues, issues 62 and 63, are both more or less standalone stories. I mean, they do connect to the main narrative, but you could read each of these on their own. But the issue I want to talk about is issue 63, 40. But this was a really fun issue. It's really just about Constantine's 40th birthday, and his friends plan a surprise party for him, and both Swamp Thing and the Phantom Stranger have cameos in this issue. Now, the Hellblazer comics were adapted into the 2005 film Constantine with Keanu Reeves, and you could tell that movie was definitely taking inspiration from Garth Ennis's run on this series, especially this story arc, particularly with the characterization of Gabriel. And while I don't know this for sure, I have a sneaking suspicion that the movie The Prophecy with Christopher Walken was definitely taking inspiration from these comics. I also think Kevin Smith's Dogma probably took some inspiration from the Hellblazer comics as well, particularly with how these comics deal with the concept of angels. But yeah, that was my review of Hellblazer, Fear and Loathing, and bye.